And freshman Texas Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett came prepared last week during an oversight committee calling out House Republicans on several issues, including crime in D.C. to Congressman George Santos. Our Mark Hall is back to cover this for us. And Mark, Representative Crockett says Republicans need to treat President Trump the same way they're treating crime in D.C.
Well, that's exactly right, Tasmina, and she joins us now to talk more about this. And Congressman Crockett, thank you and welcome to Capitol Review. Let's get started. You said that the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability has you feeling like that we're going in circles. Let's first talk about D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and her top officials. They were on Capitol Hill last week to talk about crime in the district. And you were vocal on House Republicans when it comes to fear-mongering on crime in the district. Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, they weren't talking from a place of fact. The Republicans in this House like to talk from a place of fiction. So I wanted to bring some facts about Republican-controlled states, facts about states that those Republicans on the Oversight Committee serve on, and the crime rates actually being higher in those states than in some democratically run states. In addition to that, the Republicans continually say that they want to be tough on crime. But when it comes time to actually be tough on crime, they are not. And so I wanted to make sure that people understood that this was nothing more than a power grab that the Republicans are trying to execute over the elected officials that currently serve in Washington, D.C.
You know, during a different hearing last week, Congresswoman, you also called out House Republicans over Congressman George Santos, your colleague. What's your overall take on really the Oversight Committee and him remaining in Congress?
Yeah, you know, this is the cowardness that we talk about. There's so many Republicans that said, oh, no, this guy should go. But when given an opportunity to just vote on the expulsion, and to be clear, for someone to be expelled, it's not a simple majority. You have to get 2/3 of the vote. And so they didn't want to take the vote. They felt like that was going to be a tough vote because they didn't want to have to deal with that vote. So they threw the case to ethics. The case was already sitting in ethics. It was sitting in ethics and it hasn't moved. And we know that those that are doing the hard work in New York have moved a lot faster than those here in D.C. And so that's why he's currently facing charges. And I honestly don't see how he's going to get out of those charges. And that's coming from someone who has been a criminal defense attorney for almost 20 years.
You know, you're also a big supporter on gun control. You were in Texas when you heard about the mass shooting in Allen, Texas. What do you think needs to be done at the national level? Can members of Congress on both sides of the aisle find some common ground when it comes to gun control?
I don't think so. And I know that's probably not the answer that you are hoping for, but I like to be realistic. And right now, we have a party that is more concerned about making sure that there is a continual proliferation of guns in our society, that the NRA continues to keep their pockets fat, instead of actually taking care of children. The pro-life party typically doesn't care about a life once that life actually arrives. And it's really sad because you talk about Allen and the shooting there, but remember, I had El Paso. I also had Uvalde. In fact, we are coming up on the anniversary of Uvalde on tomorrow. We're talking about children that are being killed in their classrooms. We saw what happened in Tennessee, but I have to go ahead and applaud the governor in Tennessee. Now, it took the expulsion of 2 members to bring an awareness of how serious this was in the state of Tennessee, but we at least saw a Republican governor that said enough is enough, and I will even do an executive order to make sure that we get somewhere on doing something. We also saw here recently that when you give Democrats the House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion, that we can really make progress. In the state of Michigan, we saw Governor Whitmer sign red flag laws into law.
Congresswoman, with the 1-year anniversary, and I know it's nothing to celebrate, of Uvalde, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the people that were elected to protect the most vulnerable, and I say it that way because those that aren't vulnerable don't need protections. It's those of us and those of them that are struggling, those that don't have a voice, that's who we should really be fighting for, those children. And unfortunately, we still have not moved the needle in this country. I applaud what was done, but it did not go far enough. We need to make sure that we're keeping these weapons of mass destruction, as far as I'm concerned, these weapons that tend to be the weapon of choice for these domestic terrorists, out of their hands. And we are not doing that right now. And so I've got moms everywhere that are concerned about what's going to happen when they send their children to school, what's going to happen when they send their children to a mall, what's going to happen when they send their children to a movie theater. And that's not how we should be living in this country.
Congresswoman Crockett, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.